What happens when Hollywood's most beloved underdog meets daytime television's most controversial host? You're about to witness one of the most explosive confrontations ever captured on live television, where Sylvester Stallone walked into what he thought would be a friendly promotional interview and instead found himself in a verbal boxing match that would end with security escorting him off the set. This isn't just another celebrity spat. This is the moment when two completely different worlds collided in the most spectacular way possible. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened behind the scenes, because what you're about to see will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about live television. The morning started like any other at the View studio in Manhattan. Sylvester Stallone had arrived early for what his publicist had promised would be a straightforward interview to promote his latest project. The legendary actor, now in his 70s but still carrying that unmistakable Rocky Balboa confidence, sat in the green room reviewing talking points with his team. He had done hundreds of these interviews over his 5-decade career, from small local stations to major network shows. And The View was supposed to be just another stop on his promotional tour. 5 minutes to air, Mr. Stallone, called out a production assistant as she poked her head into the green room. Stallone stood up, straightened his jacket, and made his way toward the set. The studio audience was already buzzing with excitement, many of them longtime fans who had grown up watching Rocky and Rambo movies. As he walked onto the familiar set with its signature round table, the audience erupted in applause and cheers. Joy Behar was already seated at the table, shuffling through her note cards with that signature smirk that regular viewers knew all too well. She had been doing research on Stallone all week, but not the kind his publicist might have expected. While her co-hosts were preparing questions about his latest film and his legendary career, Joy had been digging into his political statements from recent years, his business dealings, and anything else she could use to create what she privately called good television. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only Sylvester Stallone," announced the show's host, as the music swelled and cameras focused on the Hollywood icon taking his seat at the table. The audience continued their enthusiastic applause as Stallone waved and settled into his chair, completely unaware of what Joy had planned for him. "Sly, it's so great to have you here," Joy began with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I have to say, you look fantastic for someone who's been taking so many hits, both in the movies and in real life." The comment hung in the air for a moment, and Stallone's expression shifted slightly, his media-trained smile becoming a bit more guarded. "Well, Joy, you know what they say, you can knock me down but I'll always get back up," Stallone replied, trying to keep things light while his instincts told him something was off about her tone. "Speaking of getting knocked down," Joy continued, leaning forward with that predatory gleam in her eyes that longtime viewers recognized as trouble. "I have to ask you about some of the choices you've made recently. I mean, for someone who built his career playing the everyman hero, you seem to have gotten pretty comfortable with some pretty elite circles." The studio audience grew quiet, sensing the shift in energy. Stallone's publicist, watching from the wings, felt her stomach drop as she realized this wasn't going to be the friendly promotional interview they had been promised. The other co-hosts exchanged glances, some looking uncomfortable with Joy's aggressive opening approach. "I'm not sure what you're getting at, Joy," Stallone said, his voice maintaining its calm but his body language becoming more defensive. "I've always tried to stay true to the characters I've played and the values they represent." "Really?" Joy shot back, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've forgotten where you came from. You've got multiple mansions. You're hanging out with billionaires, and frankly, some of your recent comments make it sound like you think you're better than the working-class people who made you famous in the first place." The accusation hit the studio like a thunderbolt. This wasn't the typical softball interview that guests expected on morning television. Joy had essentially called out one of Hollywood's most beloved figures for being a hypocrite. And she had done it in front of a live audience and millions of viewers at home. Stallone's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the cameras caught a flash of the intensity that had made him famous in action roles. "You know what, Joy? I think you've got your facts wrong. I've never forgotten where I came from, and I've spent my entire career trying to tell stories about regular people overcoming impossible odds." "Have you, though?" Joy pressed, clearly enjoying the discomfort she was causing. Because it seems to me like you've been living in a bubble for so long that you've lost touch with reality. When was the last time you actually talked to a real working person, not someone on your payroll? The question was designed to provoke, and it was working. Stallone shifted in his seat, his famous composure beginning to crack under Joy's relentless attack. The audience could feel the tension building, and some began to murmur among themselves, unsure whether they were witnessing good television or something that had gone too far. "Listen, Joy," Stallone said, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there before. "I don't know what your problem is with me, but if you want to have a real conversation about my career and my life, I'm happy to do that. But if you just brought me here to ambush me with your personal opinions disguised as questions, then maybe we should just end this right now." Joy's eyes lit up at his response. This was exactly what she had been hoping for. A reaction that would make for compelling television and give her ammunition to portray herself as the fearless journalist, willing to ask the tough questions that other interviewers wouldn't dare ask. "Oh no, Sly, we're just getting started," Joy said with a laugh that sent chills through the studio. "You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone asks you a real question, you want to run away. Is that what Rocky would do? Is that what John Rambo would do?" The comparison to his most iconic characters was a low blow, and everyone in the studio knew it. Joy had just weaponized the very heroes that had made Stallone a household name, turning them against him in the cruelest way possible. The audience gasped audibly, and even some of the crew members behind the cameras shook their heads in disbelief. Stallone's face flushed red, and his hands clenched into fists on the table. "Don't you dare use my characters against me," he said, his voice now carrying the full weight of decades of frustration with interviewers who thought they could say anything for the sake of ratings. "Those characters mean something to people, they mean something to me, and you don't get to twist them into some kind of weapon for your little gotcha moment." "But that's exactly my point," Joy continued, completely unfazed by his obvious anger. "You created these characters who represent the American dream, who fight for the little guy, who never give up no matter how hard things get. But what have you become? You're just another Hollywood elite who's completely out of touch with the people who actually live those struggles every day." The other co-hosts were now visibly uncomfortable, with one of them trying to interject, "Maybe we should move on to talking about Sly's new project." But Joy waved her off dismissively. No, this is important," Joy said, her voice rising with conviction. "Our viewers deserve to know who they're really supporting when they buy movie tickets. They deserve to know if their hero has become everything he once stood against." Stallone stood up from his chair, towering over the table, as his famous temper finally reached its breaking point. "You want to know who I really am, Joy? I'm a guy who grew up with nothing, who slept in bus stations and sold his dog just to survive while I was trying to make it in this business. I'm a guy who wrote Rocky when I was broke and desperate, and who turned down millions of dollars because I believed in that story and I believed it could inspire people." The studio fell completely silent, except for the hum of the cameras. This wasn't the polished, media-trained Stallone that audiences were used to seeing. This was raw emotion, decades of passion and pain pouring out in response to Joy's calculated provocation. "And you know what the really sad part is?" Stallone continued, his voice shaking with emotion. "I came here today thinking I was going to have a conversation with a professional journalist. Instead, I find myself sitting across from someone who gets her kicks from tearing down people who've actually accomplished something with their lives." Joy's expression hardened, and she leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile. "There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The real Sylvester Stallone. Not the humble everyman he pretends to be in his movies, but an arrogant Hollywood star who thinks he's above criticism." "Above criticism?" Stallone shot back, his voice now loud enough that the audience could hear every word clearly. "Lady, I've been criticized by everyone from movie critics, to political pundits, to people on the street for 50 years. But what you're doing isn't criticism, it's character assassination, and there's a difference." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically for the cameras. "You can't handle a few tough questions, so now you're playing the victim. How very Hollywood of you." The insult hung in the air like a challenge, and Stallone's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You want tough questions? Here's a tough question for you, Joy. When was the last time you created something that actually mattered to people? When was the last time you did something other than tear down others to make yourself feel important? The question hit its mark, and for the first time since the interview began, Joy looked genuinely rattled. Her carefully constructed persona of the fearless interviewer cracked slightly, revealing something uglier underneath. "I inform the public," she said, but her voice lacked the confidence it had carried throughout the ambush. "I ask the questions that need to be asked. You attack people for ratings?" Stallone corrected her, his voice now deadly calm. "You hide behind the pretense of journalism while you destroy reputations for entertainment. And the worst part is, you seem to enjoy it." The accusation struck home, and Joy's mask slipped completely. "How dare you!" she snapped, her voice filled with venom. "You don't know anything about me, or what I do." "I know exactly what you do," Stallone replied, his voice growing louder again. "You sit at this table every day, and you tear apart anyone who doesn't fit into your narrow little worldview. You use your platform to bully and intimidate, and you call it journalism." The studio audience was now completely captivated by the confrontation unfolding before them. This had gone far beyond a typical celebrity interview, and had become something much more personal and much more intense. "That's enough," Joy said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "You don't get to come on my show and attack me." "Your show?" Stallone laughed bitterly. "This isn't your show, Joy. This is supposed to be a place where people can have honest conversations. But you've turned it into your personal platform for destruction." The tension in the room was now so thick it was almost suffocating. Production assistants were frantically signaling to the director, unsure whether they should cut to commercial or let the confrontation continue. The other co-hosts sat frozen in their seats, unable to regain control of what had become a complete disaster. Joy stood up from her chair, matching Stallone's aggressive posture. "Get out," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Get out of here right now." "Gladly," Stallone replied, but he didn't move toward the exit. Instead, he leaned forward over the table, bringing his face closer to Joy's. "But before I go, let me tell you something. You can try to destroy me all you want. But the characters I created, the stories I told, they're bigger than your petty little attacks. They'll still be inspiring people long after everyone's forgotten your name." The words hit Joy like a physical blow, and her face contorted with pure fury. "How dare you come into my house and disrespect me like this?" she screamed, her voice echoing through the studio as all pretense of professionalism completely evaporated. "Security! Get security in here right now!" But Stallone wasn't finished. The decades of frustration with hostile interviewers, the years of being misunderstood and misrepresented, all came pouring out in one final, devastating response. "Your house? This studio belongs to the network, Joy, not to you. And those viewers you claim to serve, they deserve better than watching you destroy people for your own twisted entertainment." The studio erupted in chaos as production assistants ran in different directions, some trying to signal the cameras to stop rolling while others frantically called for security. The audience sat transfixed, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent as they witnessed television history being made in the most uncomfortable way possible. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Joy shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "You think because you played some fictional characters that people love, that makes you untouchable? Well, let me tell you something, Sylvester Stallone. You're nothing but a washed-up has-been who hasn't had a relevant movie in 20 years. The insult was designed to cut deep, but instead of breaking Stallone down, it seemed to give him even more strength. "You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right about one thing. I have been playing fictional characters my whole career. But at least those characters stood for something positive. They gave people hope. They showed them that no matter how hard life gets, you can always fight back." He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering what would become the most quoted line from the entire confrontation. "But you're not playing a character. This is who you really are. A bitter, angry person who gets her power from tearing others down. And that's not fiction, that's just sad." The studio fell dead silent except for the sound of approaching footsteps as security guards finally arrived on the scene. Joy's face had gone completely pale, and for a moment she looked genuinely shaken by Stallone's assessment of her character. "Ma'am, we need you to step back," one of the security guards said to Joy, who was still standing and trembling with rage. But her attention remained fixed on Stallone, as if she was trying to think of something, anything, that could match the devastation of his last comment. "You want to know what's really sad?" she finally managed to say, her voice much quieter now but still filled with venom. "What's sad is watching a man who used to represent everything good about America turn into just another entitled celebrity who thinks the rules don't apply to him." Stallone shook his head slowly, a look of genuine disappointment crossing his face. "The only rules I've ever tried to follow, Joy, are the ones that say you treat people with respect and dignity. Something you clearly never learned." "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us," one of the security guards said, finally intervening as the situation showed no signs of de-escalating. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of the unprecedented meltdown that would soon be replaying on social media and news outlets around the world. As Stallone began to walk toward the exit, escorted by security but not restrained, Joy couldn't resist getting in one final shot. "Run away, Sly. That's what you do best when things get tough, isn't it?" Stallone stopped dead in his tracks and slowly turned back to face her one last time. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured, but every word carried the weight of absolute conviction. "You know what, Joy? You're right. I am walking away. But not because I'm running from a fight. I'm walking away because some battles aren't worth fighting, and some people aren't worth the energy it takes to argue with them. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with fans, to share something positive. Instead, I found myself in a cage with someone who feeds on conflict and negativity." He took a step closer, and the security guards tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. "But here's what you need to understand. I may be leaving this studio, but I'm leaving on my own terms. You didn't defeat me, Joy. You just showed everyone watching exactly who you really are." The final insult was delivered with surgical precision, and Joy's composure cracked completely. "Get him out of here," she screamed, pointing toward the exit. "Get him out of here right now." "Gladly," Stallone replied, his dignity intact despite the chaos surrounding him. As he walked toward the studio exit, flanked by security guards who seemed almost apologetic about the situation, he turned to address the audience one final time. "To everyone who came here today expecting to hear about movies and storytelling, I apologize that you had to witness this instead. You deserved better, and I'm sorry you didn't get it." The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, many of them standing to show their support for the Hollywood legend who had maintained his composure even under the most aggressive attack. Joy looked around wildly, clearly shocked that the audience was supporting Stallone instead of her. "Sit down," she shouted at the audience. "This is my show. Sit down right now." But the applause only grew louder as Stallone disappeared through the studio doors, leaving behind a scene of complete chaos. Joy stood alone at the center of it all, her carefully constructed image in ruins, her reputation damaged by her own actions. The cameras finally stopped rolling as producers realized that what they had just captured was too explosive for live television. In those final moments before the feed cut, viewers at home saw Joy Behar standing amid the wreckage of what was supposed to be a simple promotional interview, looking lost and defeated by her own cruelty. As the dust settled and the studio emptied, one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't just a failed interview or a celebrity meltdown. This was the moment when years of aggressive journalism finally crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and when one of Hollywood's most beloved figures reminded everyone that there's a difference between asking tough questions and launching personal attacks. The confrontation was over, but its impact would be felt for years to come, forever changing how people viewed both the man who created Rocky and the woman who tried to destroy him on live television. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Did Joy Behar go too far? Or was Stallone overreacting to legitimate questions? Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories like this one.